Welcome everyone to the LTD Board of Directors regular meeting. It's Wednesday, January 19th, 2022. This meeting is adjourned at, convened, at 4:30, and we will be completed at 6:30. And I'm going to do a quick call to order, but I want to welcome everyone to our first meeting of the new year. Yay! So thanks so much for taking the time to be here. And it's so good to see all of your faces. So let's start with roll call. Gino Grimaldi.
Here.
Thank you, Gino. Don Norden.
Here.
Thanks, Don. Emily Secord.
Here.
Thank you, Emily. Michelle Weber.
Here.
Thanks, Michelle. Pete Knox.
Here.
Thanks, Pete. And Susan Cox, who I don't see, but we will make note when Susan arrives. So really quickly, just comments from the board president. I just want to say how excited I am going into 2022. We've got some big stuff on our agenda, but we also have done some really great things in the past year. It's super exciting to see a full board of directors. It's a great board of directors at that. I just can't tell you how grateful I am that you're all here and participating and helping move LTD forward as an agency and representing the community as well. So I just want to make sure we're kicking this year off on a good foot. So unfortunately, we don't get to interface in person very often, but happy we could all do this virtually and make it work. Obviously, this year is our big task of hiring a new GM. We're going to dive into that a little bit later, but I just want to preemptively thank those who are thinking about this and spending time already making sure that we're going to hire the absolute best CEO for LTD. And I'm just really excited to see what happens. So this is going to be a really fun year. Super excited. We're all on board. Mark, what about you?
Yeah, I'd just like to bring the board's attention to the handout that was a letter from LTD and partner cities on the RAISE grant, just thanking our legislative folks for their support and us getting that grant. So it'll allow us to work with Eugene and Springfield to redevelop Franklin. So we're excited about that. And so that's a letter that Caitlin signed on behalf of the board. And then the other thing is that we finished the public outreach yesterday for the public for the GM search, and we had 11 total meetings with community members and employees, and they were extremely helpful, extremely enlightening. We probably had pretty close to 70 people participate in the actual meetings. So they're really good. So we will look forward to February 2nd when we will talk about what we heard and have some draft information for you.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing that, Mark. And 70 people is amazing. So that's so good to hear that. And that's just a positive reinforcement that folks are interested in LTD and feel passionate about it. And it's great that they're willing to share their feedback. So let's move on to announcements and additions to the agenda. At this time, there's no additions to the agenda. However, I want to check to see if any board members have announcements. Okay. See head shaking. Thank you. I'm going to now turn it over to Mark for Employee of the Month.
And let's see here. I think I'm going to be turning it over to Jake McCallum.
Zoom is processing. He's on his way. There we go.
There we go. I think hopefully everybody can hear me.
Yes.
Good evening. Thank you, President Vargas and board members. My name is Jake McCallum. I'm the Director of Operations at Lane Transit District. I oversee operations department, public safety, and training. It's my privilege to present the Employee of the Month. It's a dual presentation to Transit Public Safety Officer George Denley and Transit Operations Supervisor Sean Bradley. They were selected for their actions that they took in regards to responding to an incident at Eugene Station. A little background, Mr. Denley was hired as a public safety officer in March of 2017. During that time, he has received Employee of the Month awards both in November 2018 and February of 2021. Mr. Bradley was hired as a bus operator in January of 1998 and promoted to Transit Operations Supervisor in April of 2004. During that time, he's received Employee of the Month awards in June of 2001 and August of 2021. Transit Public Officer George Denley responded to a bay at Eugene Station for a report of a medical emergency. The officer and Transit Operations Supervisor Bradley responded and found a person bleeding severely from wounds to the head and arm. In their opinion, both Denley and Bradley indicated that they appeared to be life-threatening injuries. The public safety officer Denley summoned emergency personnel via 911 while Transit Supervisor Bradley initiated emergency first aid assisted by Denley. Mr. Denley and Bradley were attempting to control the bleeding with available resources. Paramedics arrived shortly after that and assumed the treatment of the individual, subsequently doing and expediting transport to a medical facility. It was later learned that a suspect had attacked and injured the subject with a weapon about a half a block away on Olive Street. The victim came to LTD for help. Through LTD station video of early event, the suspect was identified and arrested by the EPD. I wish to commend both employees for their fast response and selfless actions in the face of a dire emergency with a member of the public. When asked to comment about their selection, I said basically both of these employees work hard each day to provide safe, reliable transportation to our community. It truly is about serving our community, and both the public safety and operations department consistently work together to lead by example. I'm thankful to work with both employees that have the training and courage to help others when in need. And really that is what it's about. It's not just about the service that we provide to the community, but we're out there in all capacities willing to jump in and help whenever needed. So thank you both.
That is an intense situation. Wow.
Yeah, we deal with those type of things day in, day out. Some are smaller, getting somebody's wallet back to them, and then other ones are pretty major, like this one that just happened to happen.
Well, it's a good situation to think that the people of Eugene come to LTD for assistance when they need it. They know there's something there that can provide that assistance.
Absolutely. Thanks, Don. They do that day in, day out. They know that we're there to help them, whether it's a public safety officer, a supervisor, or a bus operator. And that's outside of the station as well. We deal with that day in, day out, where they'll meet up with a bus operator and say, hey, I need help, or I need a safe place. And we're involved in that on a daily basis as well.
Good work.
Any other comments from board members?
Thank you. It's incredible that people rely on LTD for their safety, and that the decision was made that maybe save somebody's life. It's pretty incredible. Thanks, team.
Well said. And Susan, thank you so much for joining. I want to note that Susan has joined the meeting.
Sorry for the delay.
That's okay. All right. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Jake. And that's a stark reality. So, wow. So yeah, just thank you, LTD team. That is a heavy lift, and we're just really grateful for the work that's being done. Camille, can you please lead us in public comment?
Absolutely. Thank you, Caitlin. It looks like most of our attendees are staff, so I will just pose the question really quickly, asking if there is anyone who would like to provide public testimony this evening. Please use the raise your hand indicator. And if you are joining via your phone, please press *9 to raise your hand. I'll give everyone just a moment. Caitlin, I am not showing anyone indicating they would like to speak this evening.
Great. Thank you so much, Camille, for asking if anyone was wanting to give public comments. So we're going to go ahead and move forward with board member reports. What board members would like to share about committee meetings they've had over this past month? Pete or Susan, do you, oh, okay, Pete, I see your hands up. I was going to say, maybe you could share with this board about some changes with SPC leadership, but Pete, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna report on yesterday's CATC meeting that the big topic that we got to talk about was the comprehensive operational assessment of RideSource, where they're currently putting together the plan to go out and request for bid for some consultants to help them really do a top to bottom review of RideSource and the call center and all those things that go with it. And it sounds like they're moving right along as far as getting that together. We also talked about the CATC was one of the last groups to be talked to by the consultants who are doing our GM search, and there was some feedback as far as questions they wanted to be asked as far as relating to people with disabilities and reflecting what the community was looking, that the disability community was looking for in a general manager. So overall, an excellent meeting.
I would
so
just,
much, Pete. Go ahead, Susan.
I would just add that I think there was a real sense of appreciation on behalf of the disability community that they were getting a chance to weigh in and have input. So I was, that was gratifying to hear.
Don, go ahead.
Oh, I mean, as you see in our package, the regional transportation was approved at the Metropolitan Planning Commission. Also at the Lane Act, there was a significant discussion about the developments of the build out between Eugene and Veneta around Fern Ridge. And that looks like a very, well, it's not approved yet, but they got, it's moving ahead well. And that looks like that area of West Eugene will be significantly improved by the operations, ODOT's operations there. So that's what I have for that.
Any other board member reports? All right. So let's go ahead and move on to, where am I? Consent calendar. I think I've done this enough times. I should have this memorized. So any discussion about any of the 3 items on the consent calendar? With that, does anyone want to make a motion for approval?
I move adoption of LTD resolution number 22-01-19-001. It is hereby resolved that the consent calendar for January 19th, 2022 is approved as presented.
I'll second that.
Perfect. Thanks for making the motion, Michelle, and providing the second, Emily. We'll go ahead and do a roll call vote. Don Norden.
Aye.
Thanks, Michelle.
Aye.
Thanks, Michelle. Gino.
Yes.
Thanks, Gino. Pete.
Aye.
Thanks, Pete. And Emily.
Yes.
And Susan.
Aye.
Thank you. And I vote aye, so that passes unanimously. Great. So I want to, we're going to move on to our next agenda item, which is the officer election for treasurer. So if you want to move to page 14 in your packet, and the reason I'm asking you to do this is so you can, it tells you how to make a nomination. So really quickly, the reason that we are doing this is because Don was previously the treasurer and he got voted into vice presidency. So this position for the treasurer ends actually December 30th, 2022. So it's just for the remainder of this year, not a full 2-year term. So just wanted to put that out there. And if you have any questions about what the treasurer may do, Mark can answer those for you right now. If there are no questions, you can make, I will open it up for nominations, but I just wanted to see if anyone had any questions first or any discussion. Okay, so I can open the floor for nominations now. And as a reminder, the nominations do not require a second.
I'd nominate Michelle Weber.
Thanks, Don. Are there any other nominations? Okay, great. Let's go ahead and I'm going to close the nominations and I'm going to call for a vote. Michelle, do you accept this nomination?
Yes.
Great, thank you. All right, so please signify aye or yay or nay. So I'm going to start with Gino.
Yes.
Thanks, Gino. And Pete?
Aye.
Thanks, Pete. Don?
Yes.
Great. Susan?
Yes.
Emily?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
All right, and I also vote aye. So that passes unanimously. Michelle Weber is now the new treasurer for LTD Board of Directors. Michelle, thank you for stepping up in this opportunity to serve. So excited to have you in that role. Thank you so much.
You bet.
Right. Okay, so our next agenda item, and then I get to be quiet for a while and we get to listen to some really great presentations. I'm excited for our agenda this evening. We're going to talk very quickly about the ad hoc executive search committee. So the reason it says discussion is we have essentially a decision to make as a board of directors. And what that decision is there's a lot of kind of extra time and extra work that would be required as we're doing the GM recruitment search, specifically if there's different candidate interviews or documents to review or whatever that would look like. So really we have these two options. One option is we do everything as a full board. And then understanding the time requirement and all of that. The other option is we're saying, oh, I don't know if all seven of us can constantly be making kind of meetings, and that might be hard. So maybe we should think about just 3 of us and we form an ad hoc executive search committee. And then that would be 3 representatives who would put that extra time in, but not making the decision of hiring the next GM, just being that sounding board and bringing that back to the full board and saying, here's some of the stuff we did, here's some candidates we weeded out, here's some good ones we're sending your way. But of course, the full board is making that ultimate decision. So I think it'd be great if I'm just going to go around to each of you, and if you could share your opinion or view as to if you feel like this could be a full board or you feel comfortable doing the committee. So let's go ahead and start with Dawn.
I would prefer that we work as a full board on this. This is our one job as the board of directors, and I feel like we should all be engaged in it as much as we can.
Okay. Pete, what are your thoughts?
I understand where people might have some time constraints, and I'm somebody who can move things well, would be willing to do this, but I agree with Dawn. If the more of our board, because this is such a key thing for the board, I've more of it that can actually do this, the better.
Okay, Michelle, what about you?
In my prior experience hiring at this level, I understand why we would want to kind of shorten or lessen the number of people in those decisions. But I also know that every board member felt really, really dedicated and obligated and responsible for this big decision. So I tend to agree that as many board members as can be involved, it's probably the best approach to take.
Okay, Emily, thoughts?
I'll agree with what's already been said and suggest that we have maybe a standing time so that we either hold that to be a part of it. I just need to make sure it's in my calendar. So
Mark, can you respond to that really quick? Are you feeling like it's
so on these type of recruitments, we'll be screening transfer will be screening candidates and only bring the best to us, right? And so at some point they may have, 10 reasonably good candidates where they might want to talk to the board about, well, let's talk through these things and get your input on them. Because, and for the most part, they're confidential. So it would require executive sessions to have that discussion. It would require fairly quick action. And that's why the advantage of having a smaller committee is, okay, we need to get everybody together. But, if you can't make it, you can't make it too. So I guess so. We can go either way, but just know that there'll be executive sessions involved until we, whittle it down. Usually it becomes public after you whittle it down to 3. It's an important element, I think, for people who want to apply. One of the, often questions they ask is, when will it become public, right? Because they've got a current employer that they don't, really want to let them know they're looking for other work. So, and we can go either way, but just, know that, they may come up fairly quickly. And so.
Thanks for that response. That was, and also a good prompt, Emily. So I appreciate you asking about the kind of the calendar and the scheduling and all of that. Gino, what are your thoughts? And I think you've probably been through stuff like this in your job before.
I could really do either way. I like the way you described it, that a subcommittee would not be making decisions for the board, but maybe doing a little work to condense the conversation a bit. But if people want to do the full group, I'm more than willing to do that also.
Susan, what are your thoughts?
I support the idea of the full board, as long as people can make the commitment. I think it will just bring cohesion to the decision-making process. So I'm willing to commit to the time.
And Emily, any other thoughts, knowing that it wouldn't be scheduled far out in advance, it'd be more of a kind of a pop-up meeting that you wouldn't get a lot of advance notice on? Just want to check in.
Yeah, no, thanks so much for circling back on that, Caitlin. I guess my theory is if we, know that it's likely that it will be a quick turnaround time, if we said, hey, hold your Fridays at 9 a.m., for the next 6 weeks or something like that, it would be really helpful. That way more of us could be available. Obviously, it's already hard to coordinate calendars, so I would hate to call these sessions and not have a quorum or so on and so forth.
And Mark and Andrea, maybe you can answer this for us. For executive session, do we have to have a quorum just to have a discussion?
Yeah.
So say only 3 of us.
You don't necessarily make decisions at the executive sessions. So what it would look like is you'd have a discussion around the candidates, and Transpro would take that away and kind of whittle it down based on what you said, or have candidates come to the top based on what you said. So it doesn't necessarily need a quorum because there's no decision to be made.
How advance notice do we have to give to have an executive session?
I think it's 3 days. I don't. Camille, those rules.
It would be a special meeting, and it would be ideal to do at least 3 days.
Yeah, and I mean, and I'm not saying that we're going to have these surprise meetings. I mean, we can easily schedule them out a couple weeks. So I mean, I didn't mean to indicate that they're going to be only a couple days. I mean, we can certainly schedule them out a couple weeks, and I'll sit down with Transpro, and we will take a look at that and certainly get some things on the calendar just so you can block it out.
Michelle?
I was just going to suggest that maybe when we can't guarantee what day we would necessarily want to have these conversations. It's going to be based on how things progress, but that maybe we could poll board members to like a time of day that might be better, and kind of land on something that we can at least kind of know that potentially that time frame on any specific day could be something we would need to adjust for.
I like Emily's suggestion of Fridays at 9 personally, but we can work in the logistics down the road. Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong. From what I'm hearing is that there's a strong preference for the whole board to be involved. Yet, will you nod or shake your head? Okay, so so Mark, it sounds like we will not be doing an ad hoc committee. Rather, full board is going to be involved with the process.
Okay, that sounds just fine.
Okay, and then of course, if there are concerns along the way or something's not working, Mark is going to be the person that you contact with anything, as we figure this out and do this for the first time, but Mark will be your contact for that. Okay, so thank you for input on that. Appreciate that conversation. I'm actually really excited to bring this next agenda item up, only because Dawn and I had the pleasure of actually seeing this presentation, a version of it, when we went to the APTA conference in Florida. So Kalina is going to be talking about equity in transit. And Kalina, we are so glad you're here with us this evening. We're so excited to watch your presentation and learn from you. So thank you so much for being here. And your shirt matches the background. Look at that.
Good evening. Can you all see my screen? Okay, great. So, I'm Kalina Beard, Director of Business Services and the co-chair of the district's Diversity Council. In November 2021, LTD staff was invited to participate in a panel during the American Public Transportation Association's 2021 Transform Conference. The panel's topic of discussion was what an equitable transit service looks like, putting equity into action. And the panel explored what a commitment to delivering equitable service entails and how that is shaping service structures, service delivery, and access. Panelists shared about the tools, practices, and policies they found to be effective in achieving equitable outcomes from comprehensive equity assessments. And pardon me, I have a 3-year-old here. One moment.
I'm so glad I'm not the only one.
It's like her toddler was probably quiet this whole time, and the second she started talking, giving her presentation, she probably like burst in the room. I can just feel it.
That is exactly the case. I apologize. I'll turn off my video for the presentation. I apologize. So the panelists shared about the tools, practices, and policies they found to be effective in achieving equitable outcomes, from comprehensive equity assessments to authentic community engagement, and discussed the future of transit planning. LTD shared the stage with Indianapolis Public Transportation Corporation, Indigo, Central Ohio Transit Authority, COTA, and the Maryland Transit Administration, MTA. With some minor tweaks to make this presentation pertinent to the audience, this is the presentation given at that conference. Whether intentionally or unintentionally, public transportation has historically made decisions that have negatively and disparately impacted marginalized communities, thus reinforcing structural racism. Doval Carter, president of the Chicago Transit Authority and an AMTA board member, said in an address to the Transportation Research Board that public transportation funding decisions are a direct reflection of who we value in society, who we believe is worth investing in. When benefits are available to everyone equitably, the results are more employment, higher wages, better funded schools and public services, and improved access to public transit. According to a 2020 study, Citigroup calculated that if we had adopted policies to close the economic gap 20 years ago, the US GDP would have been $16 trillion higher. In 2020, with the board's amendment of its diversity policy, LTD defined what diversity, equity, and inclusion means to the district. We further amplified the importance of equity by adopting it as one of our core values. Our strategic business plan states that we commit to listening, learning, and including voices from the diverse identities and abilities of our employees and our community. And we take care to consider how our decision-making processes address historic inequities in transportation. So why lead with race? A racial equity framework that is clear about the differences between individual, structural, and institutional racism, as well as the history and current reality of inequities, has applications for other marginalized groups, and recognition of the intersectionality of race with other master status identities can help to achieve greater unity across communities. Master status identities include race, gender, ability, class, and sexual orientation. But race is called a grand master status identity. Why? Dr. Tracy Robinson Wood states that as a social construction, race has the ability to eclipse other identities that may be just as potent in identity construction. And as we look at the context in which we reside, the issue of race has been a longstanding consideration in Oregon. In 1844, the provisional government of the Oregon Territory passed a law banning slavery, but at the same time required any Black person in the territory to leave. 5 years later, the US territory established its second exclusion law, declaring a ban on any Negro or mulatto to enter into or reside within its borders unless already established there. In 1850, the Donation Land Claim Act was passed to promote homestead settlements in the Oregon Territory. The law granted 320 acres of designated areas free of charge to every unmarried white male citizen 18 or older, and 640 acres to every married couple arriving in the Oregon Territory before December 1850. This was in complete disregard of the fact that these lands were occupied by more than 50 Native American tribes. Nearly 10 years later, when Oregon became a state, lawmakers inserted Black and Chinese exclusion clauses into the state constitution. Oregon is the only state in the union to have done so. Blacks, Chinese, and indigenous peoples were forbidden from working or owning property in the state. Enforcement of this law was officially ended in 1926. However, the language wasn't removed from the Oregon Constitution until 2002. Though the enforcement of exclusion laws ended in 1926, people of color still endured much discrimination in Lane County. Pictured here is the Fair Street Bridge current day. In March 1948, Black families living in Tent City, a settlement on the north bank of the Willamette River, received notice to vacate their property within 6 months. On August 24, 1949, a bulldozer entered the settlement and smashed the homes, shanties, and a chapel that had been established there. Many of the residents had seen this coming and were prepared. However, when the bulldozing began, it did not end with the homes designated in the notices. The bulldozers flattened families' homes in the surrounding area, leaving many shocked and newly homeless people holding whatever they had managed to rescue in a few minutes. Because Blacks were prohibited from residing in Eugene's established neighborhoods, those who chose to stay in the area settled in 3 locations, mostly on the outskirts of town with no water, electric, or sanitary service. Despite this history, one of the most familiar and early photographs of Eugene shows a Black man, Wiley Griffin. In 1891, Wiley Griffin operated one of the mule-drawn streetcars that worked between the railroad depot and the University of Oregon. The Lane County historian says, one of Eugene's African-American residents was one of several mule car drivers. Wiley Griffin, the ebon-hued muleteer and obsequious Chesterfield of the system, could be commonly seen along the early streetcar route, vainly seeking to coax a spasmodic burst of speed out of the perverse long-eared critter. But Wiley Griffin wasn't the first Black person to live in Eugene. Though it was illegal for them to be in Oregon, there were enough Black folk living in Eugene in 1863 for the newspaper, the Morning Register, to have asked their opinion about the end of slavery. The paper did not print their names, so the earliest Black person on record in Eugene is Wiley Griffin. As noted in the quote highlighted in the first slide, our industry, the transportation industry, from planning, funding, design, scheduling, and vehicle fleet choices, has been influenced by inherited structural racism. So as we move forward, staff is endeavoring to redefine the context of race and equity in transportation within our community. The district's newly adopted mission, vision, and values define what's in and what's out at LTD. Both internally and externally, we have doubled down on our commitment to our customers, our community, and our employees. And in so doing, in January 2021, via resolution, the board empowers staff to prioritize anti-racism in the evaluation of our internal and external policies and decisions. This is in complete alignment with what we see going on in the industry as a whole. During the 2020 Transform Conference, APTA launched its Commitment and Recognition Program on Racial Equity. The commitment provides both agency and business members with a common framework that helps define, initiate, and advance racial equity within their organizations, and provides the tools to measure and recognize progress on racial equity in the public transportation industry. In November 2021, President Biden signed into law the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, thus creating the Reconnecting Communities program. This $1 billion program aims to restore community connectivity. Pardon me. Can you all still see the screen, the slides?
Yes, we see the LTD's commitment to racial equity.
Okay, great, thank you. This $1 billion program aims to restore community connectivity by removing, retrofitting, or mitigating existing highway or other transportation facilities that create a barrier to community connectivity. Additionally, the Justice 40 initiative is committed to securing environmental justice and spurring economic opportunity for disadvantaged communities that have been historically marginalized and overburdened by pollution and underinvestment in housing, transportation, water and wastewater infrastructure, and healthcare. This one is of particular interest to us as we will have to demonstrate how we are complying with these requirements in our upcoming grant applications. So what steps are LTD taking to put equity into action? we are establishing an equity baseline. The purpose is to use the baseline to ensure in a measurable way that we are providing equitable service to everyone. This is in service to the in all that we do part of our vision, and to apply it in ways that we have not historically. It's a lens to set budget priorities, to look at the strategic business plan and the upcoming comprehensive operational analysis for both our fixed route and paratransit. The board recently approved the adoption of the IAP2 framework for public engagement. IAP2 will be the foundation for development of LTD's public engagement plans moving forward. Why is that significant? It means that we trust the community to clearly communicate to us where they want to go and how they need to be able to access our services. Our goal is to ensure that the historically disenfranchised populations within our service area have a seat and a voice at the table in order to be able to influence the decisions being made about our service delivery. While we recognize that equity is a values discussion, our current service policy hasn't been revised for 20 years. One of the questions that our service and development planners are asking themselves is how to develop this technical document in such a way that the Title VI requirements of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 are only the basement and not the ceiling. We have to recognize that there are already systemic barriers that have been set in place. So we must look at the things we are currently doing that may exacerbate the impact of those barriers and determine how we might mitigate them. As we re-engage the community, staff has recognized that equity isn't in addition to or an extra layer to the recommendations that we would make to you concerning the comprehensive operational analysis. The framework provided by our strategic business plan makes it clear that equity, social, and environmental justice are interwoven into our processes, policies, procedures, and thus our service. This month's department report provides an overview of the district's activities related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Our employees have spent a lot of time having discussions around diversity, equity, and inclusion, what it means to us, and how we'd like LTD to show up in our community. This is a formal invitation to the board to join staff in our learning opportunities around these key topics. And I welcome any questions from the board.
And if you have questions, go ahead and raise your hand or just speak up, whatever you'd like to do. Susan?
I appreciate the opportunity that the board will be invited to participate. When I remember at one point saying I wanted to be on the committee and they said, no, this is just staff. So thank you for inviting additional participation.
It's our pleasure. Thank you.
Hey, Gino, go ahead.
Got to unmute. I don't have any excuses. Just me here. Thank you for the presentation. That was very good. We have a big decision coming up in the next few months, and that's moving ahead. How do we take these concepts and apply them to moving ahead?
So luckily, Andrew has been working very closely with the Diversity Council, Tom as well. They are regular participants, and they've already been thinking of such things and been applying them as they can. You know, the thing with moving ahead is that that project has been moving ahead quite a bit. It's been moving ahead quite a bit. But where they can and where we have that input, our development planners have really been on the forefront of taking care of that. Tom as well as being a champion for us in that arena.
Great, that's good to hear. Thank you.
Thank you, Kalina. That was awesome. I'm so excited about all this work and all of this intention behind the scenes that's going into this. I think it's such an important topic, and I really hope that the board can help push forward any of the pieces that you might need some support or extra input on. So please feel free to tap our shoulders and ask us questions. We definitely want to be a part of this.
Thank you, Emily.
Any other questions from board members? I didn't know a lot of that background when I first heard it, and that was really interesting to me. It's always interesting to learn about where you grew up or where you live and just kind of how culturally things unfolded. So I appreciate you educating us. Any other comments?
Just such a great opportunity for us to maybe correct some wrongs that have happened in the past and just sort of do better going forward. And sidebar, I really enjoyed the ABCs in the middle of the presentation. So I thought that was great. Thanks.
Little refresher.
Thank you.
So Kalina, thanks for being here tonight. You know, I think that some of the conversations are new conversations, and I'm not just saying that for our board of directors, but maybe folks in the audience, or just kind of our society in general, as we become more comfortable talking about equity, and we're changing the definition of equity. And I think that the strategic business plan really helped LTD get a good framework for how LTD views equity and what that means, and just how, like I said, those definitions are changing to include different underrepresented populations. So really enjoyed the conversation this evening, and round of applause for Kalina. Thank you so much for being here. So board of directors, I warned you we had a really fun agenda this evening. So next we're going to bring over Tiffany Edwards. She's going to talk following the December meeting. She gave us an update. So this is the pre-session legislative update. So Tiffany, we're so excited to have you. You're going to bring the fire, bring the energy. We're doing great on time. So welcome, and turn it over to you.
Hey, thanks, Caitlin. Wow, a lot of pressure there, being bringing the energy and the fire with my legislative update. It's great to see you all this afternoon. I guess it's evening now. So I'm just going to provide a really brief pre-session legislative session update, kind of overview. I'm just going to share mostly about the process and what to expect. Don't have any handouts or a presentation. The bills are still dropping, so I'm still waiting on actual language and bill numbers, but I'm told that they should go into our bill tracking system by Friday. And but for now, I just wanted to share a few things, some things going on with the session that are unique and dynamic. And so I just kind of wanted you all to know what's happening. So the first things first, it's a short session. It's the 1 month annual February session. Everything that we typically do in the long session is highly compressed and abbreviated. So, you know, while there are a lot fewer bills introduced, there's always more bills than the legislature has bandwidth to deal with. And so this is going to be no different. The vast majority of bills won't pass, but it's always a challenge to figure out what's likely to move and what is, you know, until we start seeing hearings being scheduled, we just won't know much. So the session is going to officially start February 1st. They will need to adjourn by the Oregon Constitution by March 7th. So we basically have 4 weeks for a bill to have a hearing, a committee vote, a floor vote, and then repeat all of that in the other chamber. And so if anything has any significant opposition or roadblocks, it's not likely to make it through this February session. I did want to share some recent developments that are pretty significant and that are really going to set the stage for the short session. There's been a complete change of leadership in the House. So the Republicans have elected a new minority leader. So Vicki Breeze Iverson, who's from Prineville, happens to be married to my former business partner, because it's a small world. So she's now at the helm in the minority office. And then Tina Kotek has resigned and stepped down as Speaker of the House, which is a big deal. She's running for governor along with half the rest of the state. I'm kidding, not really, but a lot of people running for governor. So Dan Rayfield, who's been a co-chair of the Ways and Means Committee, he has been voted in by by the Democratic caucus. He still needs to have a vote of the full House, but given that the Democrats have a supermajority, that's pretty likely to happen. So Dan Rayfield is looking to be the next Speaker of the House. And then the House Democrats have also elected a new majority leader. So Julie Fahey, Representative Fahey from right here in Eugene, has been elected as the new majority leader. So lots of changes. All of that is new. That the entire leadership team, this is going to be their first session working together. In the Senate, our longest running Senate president, Senator Peter Courtney, has announced he will not be seeking re-election. So this will be his last session as Senate president, and in fact, sit as a senator. So this is also extremely significant. He'll be there for this short session, but you know, that's going to be an interesting dynamic because he's going to be working with a lot of new leadership. Also, the House Senate recently elected a new minority leader, which is Senator Tim Knopp from Bend. And so this will be his first session leading the Senate Republicans. So just a lot of new leadership. This is all very significant because the leadership is really where, you know, all of the major decisions at the top are made. And so who's in leadership really impact, and their priorities and, you know, their style of leadership really impacts all of the dynamics of the session. It also just means there's a whole lot of unknowns about how things will run procedurally. There are also a number of longtime legislators who have either left or are leaving and have vacated midterm. So there's just, I'm predicting that things are going to be a little bit clunky as everyone sort of is settling in. And I've used this analogy to people who are sports fans. It's like having a whole new team of players and a new coach. So it's, you know, we really don't know how they're going to play until the whistle blows and we just start to see how it works. The other unknown is really kind of what the session's going to look like. We're dealing with a COVID environment still. There's construction at the Capitol. So we know hearings will be virtual. So we're expecting a lot more Zoom. We're preparing for that. But we just don't know, you know, what we're looking at in the way of trying to connect with legislators. In the past, it was a challenge because getting legislators for a Zoom meeting, for even the 15-minute meetings, was always difficult. Ordinarily, you know, when the public can access the building and the lobby is there, I mean, you can grab them between meetings and have a quick chat or go for a beer. I mean, it's just a lot different right now. And it's not just the citizens and the lobby that's having hard time accessing members. They're having the same issue trying to connect with one another. So there's just a lot of, you know, it's a big challenge because everybody's having to Zoom or talk on the phone, and there's a lot of frustration. And of course, that they didn't adjust the number of bills that they would normally introduce. So we still have the same kind of workload that we always would have. Other dynamic I'll share is that it is an election year. So March 8th is the filing day for the primary. And so that's actually the next day after the constitutional sine die, which is Latin for something, but it's the day they adjourn. And so we will probably see a lot more political motivation in some of the legislation that we're seeing versus more policy focused stuff. So, you know, a lot of, you know, people that are able to run on the fact that they introduced this bill or they sponsored that bill versus what actually is going to pass. And so it's just part of the political world. So then as for the bills I mentioned, we're still waiting on them to be published. We know there are some major legislative concepts coming around workforce issues, some cybersecurity programs, renewable diesel. There's a bill that would expand or encourage more conversion of renewable diesel, which we're already doing. A number of concepts around transportation from ODOT. And so, you know, we know that there's those things coming. I'm going to share the process that we normally go through just so you all kind of know the way this works. So our lobby team, Oxley and Associates, they will be providing the bills will all be coming out. There will be thousands of them, and they will whittle them down into a list of bills that may or will or potentially could have impacts to LTD. From there, I go through and I consult internally with all of my subject matter experts within the staff, because my HR department and Kelly with sustainability, I mean, they all kind of understand the way things may impact us. We also connect with the Oregon Transit Association and our other transit partners. So TriMet and Chariots and some of the others that would experience a lot of the same dynamics. And then we kind of work on figuring out which bills, may be concerns and what about them. And then we kind of work on aligning on all of those things. I mentioned this before, but I want to reiterate it. LTD rarely forms a formal position on legislation. Our role really is to engage our legislators and educate them so that they understand, that policymakers understand what our concerns are and how they stand to impact us. Things change so swiftly that it's not always just an up or down. It's we have a problem with this piece of this legislation, but if you were to amend it, then it's fine. So there's a lot of that. So it's not usually we're a hard no or we're hard, yes on a lot of things. I'm mostly looking for things that could have negative impacts to the district and focus our efforts there. It's really fast paced. It's a short session and hearings are scheduled within an hour's notice. And so it's just kind of, it's a rapid month. It's a bit crazy. And that's about what I have to share at this moment. Like I said, the bills will be coming out Friday. So we'll start that process of digging through. And then, starting on the 1st, we'll see what is scheduled for hearings, what's likely to be moving, and then, kind of go from there. So I am coming back in March for to share how it all went. And so that's what I got. But if you have questions, I am absolutely happy to take those.
Any questions for Tiffany? All right. Well,
Okay.
Thanks for being here, Tiffany. We look forward to, Dawn's got one. Go ahead, Dawn.
Well, I don't know what can happen in this session, but I'm wondering about preparing for the next time. I pointed out before, I was learning that there was an autonomous vehicle staff legislative thing that happened a few years ago. And as I learned, they didn't do anything and disbanded. And I've also learned that there's regulations that can pertain to autonomous vehicles and they have to be discussed before we can do anything with that. So I just thought, well, I don't know, this session probably doesn't seem like a good time to put it in, but somehow we get the discussion in with the legislatures so that they can work on it next year.
Dawn, I'll just share the process of whenever, I have worked in the past as I was legislative staff for about a decade. And so constituents would come to us and they would have concept that they were looking for someone to introduce a bill. And, certainly if this board and there are concepts that you are all interested, I can certainly help with that process. And, I don't know a whole lot about the autonomous vehicle legislation or anything that was proposed in the past, but there's obviously a lot of dynamics with something like that. But certainly, if there are concepts that this body is interested in pursuing or, shepherding, I can certainly help with that.
Also, last time you reported on the redistricting, and I was asking about redistricting in Lane Transit District. And I was interested in seeing if anything would change in that in the next ever, would there be any adjustment in the district boundary lines as they are now drawn?
Well, I will make this a short response because I'm going to come back to you with a more comprehensive update on redistricting. But the short of it, your districts have shifted enough that we will have to be doing some adjustments. There's a process that we will be going through. We just met yesterday with the other transit agencies and have their timelines. And so we're kind of working with a similar timeline, and there will be a process that we will be taking you through and all of that. So I believe I'm looking to get that in front of you in the next board meeting or one of the next work sessions.
Thank you.
So it's coming.
Any other questions? Okay, we will see you in our next board meeting then, Tiffany. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
Okay, our next agenda item is the marketing and communications update. And Teresa and Pat, you've been so patient with us because we had to move you from another agenda. So we are so thrilled that you are here, and just want to say thank you to both of you, Teresa and Pat, for always giving us such detailed written reports for all of our board meetings. It's always so nice to see all the progress being made in marketing communications department and all the great work that you guys are putting out. So huge thank you for taking the time to write those written reports every time. So without further ado, Teresa Brand, Pat Walsh, welcome. We're so happy you're here this evening.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Caitlin, and thank you for those kind comments. We'll keep the information flowing. Well, tonight, Teresa and I are here to talk with you about what's become known in our office as the CELTIS report. CELTIS is a marketing and communications firm with a specialty in transit that came to the district in 2018, 2019 to review the marketing department, to help us find out how we can work better and work more efficiently. After they came in and did their analysis, they provided us with a set of recommendations. And what we agreed to and wanted to do is report back to the board every year in terms of where we're at in implementing those recommendations. And tonight, Teresa Brand, the district's marketing manager, will take you through those recommendations and where we stand on many of them. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Teresa.
Thank you, Pat, and good evening, board. Nice to see you all, and thank you for this opportunity. Let me get myself situated here. Okay. We're running a lot of screens. So as you're aware, our mission is connecting our community, and we're living our vision and values. And so everything that we do, both in our communications, support this effort. The goals for this evening are to review kind of our work to date on the communications analysis recommendations, kind of where we're at, looking now at year 2, and our progress on some of the priorities, and then taking a look at what's on the horizon and what's ahead for us. So as many of you remember or have read recently in the CELTIS report, some of the recommendations were pretty global around ensuring positive and clear and consistent customer information. There was a lot of work that needed to be done to formalize our brand plan and our branding because it was a little inconsistent before on some of our materials and throughout the different products that we made. Recommendations around owning our message, optimizing our digital presence, and enhancing consistency and efficiency in basically all that we're doing in the marketing and communications functions. I'm happy to say that we've made a lot of progress over the last couple of years, and I'm hoping that you've noticed some of these. We've made a lot of improvements with our website, including making the development of a mobile responsive website, and also doing some ADA improvements, and we'll continue to do that because we have a ways to go. If you hear some whapping in the background, that is my Australian Shepherd, who has just saw me, and she's making a little bit of noise, so sorry about that. We also align staff duties and skills and responsibilities, and then the agency moved forward and hired a digital marketing specialist, Haley Pratt. And you've probably seen quite a bit of her work. She's been doing amazing work. And then more recently, the agency hired a new marketing and communications director. And so we've been very fortunate that the agency's invested in our department, because really these things have been high priority for the district to have some movement on. We've enhanced our overall digital media presence, and hopefully you've noticed some of that. We went from about 2,500 Facebook followers to now 6,200. It's probably even higher because that was last month's number. And we're really getting a lot of traction, especially with Facebook, but also with Twitter and some of our other channels. We've also seen a large increase in overall engagement with our social media. Our posts have been interesting with video and different things that really have been more engaging for the customer. This has been really amazing to watch, and also it really shows an emerging way to communicate, engage with our riders in the community. It's been very exciting. We also implemented the bench contract, and LTD has used these marketing specialists in a number of key communication efforts. For example, right now we're using the Terrell Group. In fact, even today they were there filming, both with our COVID campaign and our We Ride Together campaign. And so we're doing kind of a behind the scenes right now of all that it takes from LTD employees in different roles to get those buses on the road and also fulfill our mission. And so you'll be seeing that as we move forward over in the next few months. The agency also ceased having exterior bus advertising on our fleet. We've received many compliments from some of our riders on this effort. In particular, a number of people who ride on the McKenzie Valley route, very excited to be able to have those big windows and look out and see the beauty of riding up the McKenzie. And again, there's been an increased focus on project communications planning and implementation. Some of the other things that we've been working on, we completed a crisis communications plan, and we've also done our first crisis drill, and soon to do another one here shortly to get us ready for whatever crisis that'll occur. And so we've done some really good work on seeing what our skills are and getting us ready, and also practicing that and being ready for whatever comes next. There's also been a large increase of the use of video for our digital communications. You probably noticed that. Things like the GM report, the quarterly reports we've been doing with video, the Why I Drive campaign, and finally an increased focus on data and results, which helps us with our planning for future communications. One example of this is monitoring social media and our website traffic patterns. So these are some of the ways we've been putting our learning from the Seltzers report into practice. Our team has been ensuring that there's consistency in how we're using the brand colors and design. There's also a consistent look and familiar look to our materials and products, and that these flow across all of our channels. It's not just with print, but we have that same thing reflected on the website and on social, so it looks like they're all part of, quote, the family. Some additional examples of the work in different platforms, both printed, signage, digital. As you can see, there's a similar look and feel. And we wanted to make sure, again, that things look like they're part of the family. And this is how we're putting these recommendations into practice. So what lies ahead? We are continuing to work on our customer experience tools, and you'll see some of that over the next couple of years of, what can we do to make it easier for the customer to access information in a way that they would like. We hope to upgrade the bus stop signage, and this is probably a multi-year effort, and that will require some grant funding because it's kind of a major project. We have a lot of bus stops out there. Continued evolution on our digital communication channels, following trends, and we just know that that's how people are accessing our information. We saw that during snow and ice, where people really went to our Twitter feed, they went to the website, and we didn't get as many phone calls, which showed us that they were getting what they needed from those other channels. We'll continue to work on improving our website. We're going to do an evaluation and have a consultant help us with taking a look at what other transit agencies are doing with website, so we can evolve our website into something that's a little more modern. And we hope to do that beginning in 23 and finishing it into 24 and to 25. So you'll see some improvements with that. And again, we're looking at enhancing electronic tools for messaging and payments. LTD has a project with a travel wallet that they're working with City of Eugene to come up with kind of a one-stop shop on how you pay and also access the different services including things like bike parking, how to get on the bus, and a number of things. So that'll be really exciting when that gets done. It's called the Zephyr Project. So look for that in the next year or two. And let's see, I'm on the right slide here. There we go. In addition, we'll continue to support our branding and communications work, supporting the agency's key priorities, including the strategic business plan, and enhancing our internal communications in ways including digital, video, and print. And so we're kind of looking across both internal and external, both with branding and how we're communicating to make sure that we're reaching our internal and external customers in the way that they want to be reached, and with a lot of variety of tools. And we'll entertain any questions or hear any suggestions or feedback that you might have.
Has everyone seen the commercial that actually is airing on TV? Yes, no?
I saw that commercial last night.
It's just fantastic. So Teresa, if you're willing to send out a link to that to the board members, I think it'd be great for them to see. It's just an amazing, it's such a great commercial. Michelle, what did you think?
It has a lot of energy. It was really, really well done.
All right, so questions. I see Don's hand up.
Thank you, Teresa, for this very, very thorough presentation. One of the things that I noticed in looking through the bigger thing that you gave us, the handout and the one we had from, I don't know, November, December, is, well, just a suggestion. You're mentioning keeping it in the family thing. We have our 5 elements: the customer satisfaction, employee engagement, what is it, community value, and all of financial and sustainability. And it just was a suggestion that perhaps on each of these pages, it could be a bullet point that brings it back to those elements that we're trying to emphasize in our strategic business plan. Just a thought. I noticed on some of the pages it was actually there already.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Dawn. One thing I can say that we have done is Haley has done some short social media posts regarding individual elements of the strategic business plan using those values. And so we'll continue to do that. And again, the more suggestions, the better. I'll talk to the team about that, but that's a great idea. We'd love to do that.
I'd just like to add too, most of what we do in the marketing realm is about customer satisfaction. How do we serve the customer better? How do we provide them better information? How do they understand who we are better? And all those things. So, I mean, it all really hinges around customer satisfaction. So.
Other questions, comments for Pat and Teresa?
It's really fun to hear the CELTUS report come back up and getting an update on how it's been implemented and what changes have come of it. So I was just really excited to see that in the board packet and get to hear the update. Thank you both.
Thank you, Emily.
We appreciate that. You know, when we were going through COVID, it was really pretty overwhelming to think how we were going to move a lot of these items forward, because we were about 6-8 months in and we were like, oh, we had this huge long list, 30-day, 90-day, 120 days. And we were kind of like, whoa. And there wasn't very many of us at that time in the marketing department. And it was really amazing to me when I looked back like 6 months later and then a year later, we knocked out so many things under the most extreme conditions with 6 service changes and all this stuff. I'm thinking, how did that happen? But it's been amazing. And it just shows you the talent and tenacity of people like Cammie and Sarah. And then as Haley came on and, you know, as Pat came on. So, you know, we had the right hires, and also people just put their heads down and thought, this is so important. We need to have movement in spite of what's happening in the more global situation with COVID and all the different changes in staffing and that kind of thing. So that's the most remarkable thing. There's so much progress that's been made under the most extreme conditions. So we're really proud of that.
That's awesome, Teresa. I think some of us, probably Emily, Dawn, and myself, remember when CELTUS came in and presented this report, and it was like, whoa, you know, because it was so huge, but also right on point. And so it's just so cool to see how far you've come. Who else has a question or comment? All right. Well, Teresa, if you are willing to send that commercial out, thanks for doing that. And we want to say thank you to the Marketing and Communications Department. Just, you guys are doing great. Keep up the great work. We're here to support you. Thanks for taking the time to talk to us tonight and get all the information ready and share that with us. But thanks for all the work you're doing. Really, really appreciate it. Doing a great job.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And more great things to come.
Yes. And then you'll have to come back and tell us about it. Okay.
We will. We're good at that.
Awesome. Thanks so much. All right. So we are actually moving on to our last agenda item. So Mark is going to be leading this tonight. It's the board bylaw review discussion and the ad hoc committee updates. So Mark, I will turn it over to you.
Okay, well, I think the committee of Michelle and Emily and Susan probably will have much to say about this, but the discussion hinged around kind of simplifying the bylaws and referring more to the policy that actually dictates, how the board and the relationships within the board and staff kind of work. So with that, I will turn it over to, I guess, Michelle is chairing that committee, I think.
Susan would be the chair of that committee.
Susan, okay, sorry. I will turn it over to her and she can have the discussion.
Well, I really want to thank Camille for all the work that she's put in and giving us updates and so on. In our last meeting, we have put together sort of a side-by-side so we can see what the bylaws are now and compared to what were the proposed bylaws. And then we've kind of gone through them actually point by point. And so we've decided that we're at the stage now where we really want to share it with other board members as well to make sure that we're kind of on the same track, that we're all thinking, basically the same stuff. I think the overall tone that we're trying to do is to simplify everything. Certainly put in the detail that needs to be that isn't there now, but at the same time, make sure that some of the things that are policies or are they regulations or procedures so that what's in the bylaws will be more systemic and it doesn't have to be changed as often simply because that's going to be done in the regulations. We have another meeting, I think, when is it? In February, and we're going to be going over the changes that have been made so far. Camille sort of condensed it down, all the edits and suggestions that we've had, and we'll be presenting that to the rest of the board. Do Emily or Michelle have anything to add?
I was just going to also say thank you to Best for preparing a side-by-side. That was really helpful for us in our initial meetings of just getting a good sense of where we've been and maybe some recommendations going forward. And then we compiled other board members' feedback into that document. And then Camille has just been great about keeping us updated and moving forward. So thank you for all of the parties that have been working on this.
Michelle?
Yes, at our last meeting too, it was determined that as part of this work, moving some of the language into procedures was more efficient and allowed us more flexibility in updating as we need to. So the suggestion was made that we should seek approval from the full board tonight to move forward with also review of the policies, since our initial scope of work was kind of directed to the bylaws.
Yes, thanks, Michelle, for bringing that up.
It became clear that as we were working through it and we were moving more and more towards regulation and policy, that the bylaws were, they needed to be merged together and they couldn't be done, they needed to be done in tandem. So that is what we felt was the next step. And we wanted this to be something that we were all in on it together. Appreciate that the ad hoc committee was able to kind of move it forward, but now we're at a point where we want everyone to weigh in. Are there any questions?
See that, Susan, are you looking to have that discussion right now and you would like all board members to take a look at the proposed changes in the packet?
I think that's correct, but we also wanted to see if the board agrees to the idea that we compare both of them, that we don't just review the bylaws, which was sort of our narrow scope, but we're also going to be doing all the policies. And that's when we felt uncomfortable just doing it as a trio, that we felt like other people needed to have some input, and appreciate the board members who have already contributed some of their ideas to the bylaws. And we, certainly took that into consideration when we were doing the review.
Pete, go ahead.
I just I've been watching the two meetings that were done so far, and you guys are I think doing a pretty impressive job, because there's a lot to go through there. I really do think that you're going down the right track as far as trying to separate things out a little bit, and leave the bylaws a little bit more systemic, and making sure that the policies and stuff, which, and some of those things are things that could be changed by the legislature in the ORS, of having it just a pointer to them, use a programming term, instead of having it folded into their language and having to undo it every time we get a change in the legislation. I think is the right way to do it. So I think if it's me, I agree with you guys moving forward with looking at the policies that are linked with the bylaws, and making sure that there is that everything aligns in the same direction. And so I am fully in support of doing that. And I think you guys are really on the right track here with doing it that way.
Thank you, Pete. Gino, I think your hand is up, or was
Sure. Thank you for your work, and I just want to echo what Pete says, and I agree with moving forward into the policy manual.
When we started looking at that, I realized it's bigger than a bread box. We can't just, you kind of need to do them also in a bit of a side by side. And this is sort of tedious in a way to go through line by line, but at the end of the process, I think it's going to be helpful moving forward. And again, Mark, appreciate all of your help, and certainly Camille, who's taken on the big job of edit, redline, all of that. So thank you so much. Do we need to have a motion, or what's the next step? Caitlin, do you want to advise?
Yeah, you don't need a motion. You got the go ahead, it sounds like, from the board. That's
sounds good.
Yeah.
And we'll be sharing this with everyone. And again, as you members made comments and had suggestions, that was so helpful. So we'll be counting on that in this next process as well. Thank you.
And what is in the board packet is the most up-to-date version of the bylaws based on what the committee said at their last meeting.
And just a disclaimer, that would be a proposed bylaw, not new bylaws.
Yeah, they're draft.
Just like to commend
catch, Emily. Oh, sorry. Don?
Yeah, I was just wanted to commend the work that you've done. I appreciate the, going into this and working through it and doing it as a team. And I'm glad I didn't have to.
Thank you.
I think we've had some,
yeah.
I think we've had some really, really good conversations, and I feel like we're we're in sync and really moving forward in this, same direction. So I appreciate the board's support in letting us continue that work.
Letting us, Michelle.
Mark, what is the timeline for adoption here?
Yeah, there really isn't a timeline. I mean, it's they're there. So whatever whatever time it takes a board to go through everything, I think is fine. So it's really up to the board and how many meetings they want to have to get it done. So, but there is certainly no.
Okay. I would love to at least listen in or be part of that policy discussion. As you start looking at the policies, I would say that is something that probably those who have some, I don't want to say seniority, but some length of time on the board can just lend some kind of background or experience there. Since I would say Emily, we've seen some different iterations, and Don's been on the board for 8 years. So I think his input is just really helpful. So I would say for the policy discussion, I'd like probably all of us to be part of that, or I would at least volunteer myself. But I think the bylaws appreciate all of you taking the time to go over this. It's not easy. And Camille and Mark, thank you for that too. But just for the policies, just Emily, Don would love to hear from you if that's a conversation that Emily, I guess you're on the ad hoc committee anyway, so you'd be there. But what do you think about having Don's voice there, since has so much experience?
Right, but that was our intention. Instead of having this contained within the ad hoc committee, now that it was policy, we wanted that opened up to the entire board.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood you. I thought you were saying this was just the next thing that you're wanting to do as the committee. I'm so sorry, I misunderstood.
Yeah, no, we're bringing you all in.
Okay, got it.
I would caution you. The policies are much more in depth than the bylaws are. Yeah. And it will take several hours for you to go through that just as a subcommittee. If you open it up the whole board, we can have as many meetings as you want to have, but it'll be very time consuming and tedious.
I guess I anticipate in the same way that we sent the bylaws out to everyone, and they could review them and submit comments or suggestions, which we reviewed as a group, and that same process would happen for the whole board. So people can weigh in as much as they want or as little as they want.
Okay. Yeah, and we can pick a few policies a month or something and just work our way through them. So however you want to do it is fine. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think we felt like some of them were going to be more meaningful, and then others were not going to be they're not going to take as much time to review. So.
Yeah, and some of them are statutes, so you really can't do a lot about them anyway. So yeah. Okay. That's
so
great.
Pending approval from the full board to move forward with the review of policies, our homework for our next meeting in February was to kind of put our heads collectively or individually to bring collectively to the conversation around the board working agreement. Thought that was a good place to start. There's a lot of, that's where the relationship with the board and the general manager and the staff really is the focus. And so we thought that would be a good place to start. So I think we scheduled that meeting for February 7th, and board members are always welcome to attend any of our committee meetings. So if there's interest in that, we would love to have those voices there. I think it's, to echo Mark's comments, it's important that we stay kind of on task, though, or it will take us a very long time to get through this process.
Okay, thank you.
So one thing I just wanted to circle back with you all, now that we're having this conversation, is that email that Mark sent on January 12th about the APTA board member seminar. As you are talking about this, it's just making me think about how can we learn more about what we're doing? How can we interface with other board members that have maybe gone through this process? So I'm going to encourage all of you board members. Has anyone actually signed up for the transit board member seminar that's next Wednesday and the following Wednesday? Gino, Michelle, Pete. Emily, Dawn, and Susan, I highly recommend taking a look at this. And, you know, just for example, like the topics are literally like building a solid and effective board CEO relationship, which will serve us well as we're hiring a new GM. And a lot of the presenters are folks that are experienced directors or you're just going to get to interface with others, and it'd be great to be like, oh, I heard that you had the opportunity to review your bylaws, your policies. I'd love to get together and talk to you about it virtually, of course. But just heavy recommendation that this is a great resource for us. What are we going to do when we go back in person and we don't have dogs and children bothering us during the meetings? It's going to be so great. So any other closing remarks or discussion around this particular agenda item?
I just wanted to get some clarity. So the request from our committee is that folks look at least the working, the board member working agreement. I think that's the right phrase. Sorry, I have too many policies in my head right now. And then please provide as much feedback as possible in advance of that February 7th meeting, so that we can actually dig into it and hopefully come back with a proposal for edits. Susan, is that what you're looking for? And Michelle, did that cover what we were trying to hone in on?
Yes.
And we will make sure we send it out to the board members so they have it.
Camille, would you mind adding that committee meeting to at least my schedule or send me a calendar invite, I would say. Is there any other board members that would like Camille to give them a calendar invite as a reminder that ad hoc committee meeting is taking place, as just a reminder?
Send it to everybody.
Okay. Yeah, I think it'd be helpful for us to have that on our calendar, so we're mindful of that deadline. Of course, it'd be nice if we could attend. If not, we get to watch the recording.
Great, thank you.
Yes, I'm happy to.
Thanks so much, Camille. Mark, anything else?
No, I think I'm good if the board is.
Okay, is there any comments or any questions about any of the written reports that were in our board packet? Okay, well, in that case, we can go ahead and adjourn. I just wanted to make sure everyone saw the poll from Camille about the budget committee. Please make sure to fill out that poll if you have not done so yet. That's very important that that gets done by the end of this week. And then I will see you all for our, Camille, do we have a work session in February?
We do, February 2nd.
Okay, so we will reconvene on February 2nd. Thanks everyone for your time this evening. And this meeting, whoop whoop, we got done early, is officially adjourned. Enjoy.